Grimes to stab me in the seat of the britches with a pitchfork. There ain't nothing which sours the milk of human kindness in a man's veins any more than getting pitchforked by a raging relative behind his back. I give a beller which shook the acorns out of the oaks, all up and down the run, and whirled on Esau so quick it jerked the pitchfork out of his hands and left it sticking in my hide. I reached back and pulled it out, and wrapped the handle around Esau's neck. Then I'd taken him by the ankles and started remodeling the landscape with him. I mowed down a sapling thicket with him, and leveled a cactus bed with him, and swept the road with him, and when his brothers tried to rescue him, I beat 'em over the head with him till they was too groggy to do anything but run in circles. Uncle Jepperd came spurring at me, trying to knock me down with his hoss and trample me, and Esau was so limp by this time he weren't much good for a club no more, so I whirled him round my head a few times and throwed him at Uncle Jepperd. Him and Uncle Jepperd and the hoss all went down in a heap together, and from the way Uncle Jepperd hollered you'd have thought somebody was trying to injure him. It was plumb disgusting. 5 or 6 of his boys recovered enough to surge onto me then, and I knocked them all down on top of him and Esau and the hoss, and the hoss was trying to get up and kicking around right and left, and his hoofs was going bam, bam, bam on human heads, and Uncle Jepperd was hollering so loud I got to thinking maybe he was hurt or something. So I reached down in the heap and got him by the whiskers and pulled him out from under the hoss and 4 or 5 of his fool boys. "Are you hurt, Uncle Jepperd?" I inquired. "Expletive deleted," responded Uncle Jepperd, rewarding my solicitude by trying to stab me with his bowie knife. This ingratitude irritated me, and I tossed him from me fretfully, and as he was pulling himself out of the prickly pear bed where he landed, he suddenly give a louder scream than ever. Something come ambling up the road, and I seen it was that fool jackass Joshua, which had evidently ate his rope and left the house looking for more grub. He looked like a 4-legged nightmare in the moonlight, but all Uncle Jepperd noticed was the red paint on him. "Help! Murder!" howled Uncle Jepperd. "They've wounded him mortally. He's bleeding to death. Get a tourniquet, quick!" With that they all deserted the fray, them which was able to hobble, and run to grab Joshua to staunch his bleeding. But when he seen all them Grimeses coming for him, Joshua got scared and took out through the bresh. They all pelted after him, and the last thing I heard as they passed out of hearing was Uncle Jepperd wailing, "Joshua, stop, durn it! This here's your friends. Pull up, dang ye! We wants to help you, you cussed fool!" I turned to see what I could do for the casualties which lay groaning in the road and at the foot of the bluff, but they said unanimous they didn't want no help from a enemy, which they meant me. They one and all promised to pickle my heart and eat it as soon as they was able to get about on crutches. So I abandoned my efforts and headed for the settlement. The fighting had scared the mules up the road a ways, but I catched 'em and made a hackamore out of one of my galluses, and rode one and led t'other, and lit out straight through the bresh for Bear Creek. I'd had a belly full of Apache Mountain, but I swung past Joel's still house to find out how come Cousin Buckner didn't go to Wolf Canyon. When I got there the still house was dark and the door was shut, and they was a note on the door. I could read a little by then, and I spelt it out. It said, "Gone to Wolf Canyon. Joel Garfield." That selfish polecat hadn't told Cousin Buckner nor nobody about the strike. He'd got hisself a pack mule and lit out for Wolf Canyon hisself. A hell of a relative he was, maybe doing poor Cousin Buckner out of a fortune for all he knowed. A mile from the settlement I met Jack Gordon coming from a dance on t'other side of the mountain, and he said he'd seen Uncle Shadrach Polk fogging down the trail on a mule he was riding bareback without no bridle. So I thought, well, anyway, my scheme for scaring him out of a taste of liquor worked. Jack said Uncle Shadrach looked like he'd seen a herd of haints. It was about daylight when I stopped at Bill Gordon's ranch to leave him his mules. I paid him for his wagon and also for the damage Captain Kidd had did to his corral. Bill had to build a new one, and Captain Kidd had also run his prize stallion off of the ranch and chawed the ears off a longhorn bull and busted into the barn and gobbled up about $10 worth of oats. When I lit out for Bear Creek again, I warn't feeling in no benevolent mood. But, thinks I, it's worth it if it's made a water swigger out of Uncle Shadrach. It was well along toward noon when I pulled up at the door and called for Aunt Tascosa. Jedge my scandalized amazement when I was greeted by a deluge of biling water from the winder, and Aunt Tascosa stuck her head out and says, "You buzzard in the form of a human being! How you got the brass to come bugling around here? If I weren't a lady, I'd tell you just what I thought of you, you expletive blanked. Git before I opens up on you with this here shotgun." "Why, Aunt Tascosa, what you talking about?" I asked, combing the hot water out of my hair with my fingers. "You got the nerve to ask," she sneered. "Didn't you promise me you'd cure Shadrach a drinking rum? Didn't you, huh? Well, come in here and look at him. He arrived home about daylight on one of Buckner Kirby's mules, and it about ready to drop, and he's been wrastling ever since with a jug he had hid. I can't get no sense out of him." I went in, and Uncle Shadrach was sitting by the back door, and he had hold of that there jug like a drowning man clutching a straw stack. "I'm surprised at you, Uncle Shadrach," I said. "What in the—" "Shet the door, Breckenridge," he says. "They is more devils onto the earth than is dreamed of in our philosophy. I've had a narrer escape, Breckenridge. I let myself be beguiled by the arguments of Buckner Kirby, a son of Belial which is without understanding. He's been wrastling with me to give up liquor. Well, yesterday I got so tired of his arguments, I said I'd try it a while, just to have some peace. I'd never taken a drink all day yesterday, and Breckenridge, I give you my word, when I started to go to bed last night, I seen a red, white, and blue jackass with green ears standing at the foot of my bunk, just as plain as I sees you now. It were the water that done it, Breckenridge," he says, curling his fist lovingly around the handle of the jug. "Water's a snare and a delusion. I drunk water all day yesterday, and look what it done to me. I don't never want to see no water no more again." "Well," I says, losing all patience, "you're a going to, by golly, if I can heave you from here to that hoss trough in the backyard." I done it. And that's how come the rumor got started that I tried to drown Uncle Shadrach Polk in a hoss trough because he refused to swear off liquor. Aunt Tascosa was responsible for that there slander, which was a poor way to repay me for all I did for her. But people ain't got no gratitude. End of the Apache Mountain War.